I don't really think it's a controversial opinion to say that game launchers on PC today are a mess. I mean, sure, most people have Steam, Epic, and maybe the EA and Ubisoft ones, only because they force you to install it in order to play any one of their titles they published, even if you purchased it somewhere else, but only a few use what in my opinion is the most underrated, GOG. For those of you who maybe need me to explain GOG to you, or maybe you've heard of it but never really understood its quirks or unique aspects, allow me to elaborate. GOG is a PC game distribution site similar to its contemporaries that I just mentioned. Also, it isn't like Humble or Anibo where you can just buy bundles of games that are just activation codes for other storefronts. GOG is a purely native storefront where you can purchase titles on the site and download them directly from it. Originally, the site hosted old PC games, as that's where the original acronym of GOG comes from, Good Old Games. But in recent years, it's branched out as more of a Steam alternative instead of pursuing the relatively niche market of old PC games. Some people in the GOG community aren't fans of this measure, but GOG is still mostly known for its original purpose. CD Projekt, the sister company to GOG, had originally started it in 2008 as a place to dump all their PC games that they acquired the licenses to, since they had worked themselves up as one of the main distributors of Western games in Eastern Europe for about the previous 15 years. In fact, some of the games on GOG, especially the older ones, tend to be the best versions of the games you can get on PC, since the website is hand-curated and every game is made sure to be able to be beaten from start to finish without any major hiccups along the way. This is also an advantage I think GOG has over Steam, which is its level of quality control. While Steam is cool for letting basically anyone dump their games into the website without having to be attached to a major publisher or company, a lot of games being sold there just straight up suck and they aren't fun. And while a lot of these games are made by amateurs, and while obviously nobody comes out of 10 out of 10 on their first try, GOG mitigates this issue by not being a place where any old Joe can drop his jank Unity project he's worked on for the past 3 weeks into the storefront and charge $60 for it. And for the people who think that this is just stifling the careers of future indie devs, this is exactly the kind of market that itch.io has, so just drop your jank Sonic fan game over there, Jeremiah. The main gimmick is that all the games on the site are free from DRM, or Digital Rights Management. Essentially, DRM is a way a piece of media can deliberately check itself for legitimate ownership. So think of constant internet connections needing to put in an activation code, or region locking content as examples. Unfortunately, the whole DRM-free part of the website is basically just anti-publisher spray, as most of the big companies haven't touched GOG or just dumped their old games onto the site like EA and Ubisoft. Rockstar and basically all Japanese publishers besides Square's Western published stuff is completely missing. Really only Bethesda and Embracer Group have any real high stakes in the platform. DRM is kinda not really talked about. We just kinda accepted it as a community that needing to have a separate account that's subject to dumb EULAs, always online internet connections, and proprietary launchers are just hoops you have to jump through in order to play games in the modern era. GOG just straight up says no to all of that and allows you to purchase any game in the storefront and play it, no questions asked. GOG also works as a vault to legally play old PC games, as many of the titles on there aren't playable on other platforms or have their licenses lost to time. This is another largely undiscussed issue in gaming that's a pretty deep-rooted issue, and that's the fact that DRM straight up kills game preservation. Need an example? Take Might and Magic 10, a pretty forgotten Ubisoft RPG from 2013, the franchise that hasn't seen relevance since the 90s. It's an alright game, and I'm not here to comment on its quality, but if you wanted to play it from June to October 2021, you were just out of luck. Ubisoft has shut down a number of its DRM activation servers at the time and inadvertently made the game unplayable to anyone who hadn't started it. Essentially, even if you had the game in your library but tried to play it in that time period, you would just be out of luck as the game couldn't connect to the server and needed in order to authenticate itself. After much public outcry, Ubisoft eventually fixed the issue and you can play the game again today with no issues, but Ubisoft had to solve an issue to a problem that no game on GOG has. So the platform has a pretty tight-knit community, but I've always found smaller, more passionate communities more engaging and fun to interact with than those massive seas of larger fandoms. Also, just due to the size, they tend to be way less toxic, though scratch all of that if it's history-related. Ergo, hoi 4. How tightly knit, you ask? Whenever Sazeth or Mandalore make a new video, I kid you not, the game they were talking about instantly becomes one of the top 5 best-selling recent games. And hey, I never would have bought Arcanum or Age of Wonders if these guys hadn't told me about them. At this point, they're basically the platform's unofficial spokespeople. And whenever there's a sale, it's literally just the same 4 or 5 games you see trending, and I really do question, are you actually a GOG user if you don't have Heroes 3, the entire Deus Ex series, and Original Sin 2 in your library? So wrapping up, GOG basically sounds like the Valhalla of game launchers with all the positives I've been saying about it, and anyone with any self-respect should move over there and purchase their library exclusively from it. Well, no, I actually don't think that. While it would be cool to see games released day one on GOG, and many do, unfortunately it's just too niche for me to recommend it to anyone to use as their one and only PC launcher. Now, while obviously you can use as many or as few launchers that you'd like on PC, you don't have to abandon Steam to use GOG. In fact, I think using the two with each other is probably the best setup. For modern games or just games done on GOG, use Steam. And for games that are old enough to drink, well, GOG's your one-stop shop. Obviously, outside the library, GOG does have some issues, like the launcher rarely getting updated, a general lack of community features outside the forum, a weirdly designed UI that's more centered around games you own on other platforms than ones you actually own on GOG, and a lot more other small stuff. GOG just isn't up to snuff with Steam, but it's kind of okay. It never really has been, or ever will be. But if you need to scratch that retro itch, or you just need to buy Deus Ex for a third time, this is the place to go. So, yeah, that's about it. See ya.